Hello everybody, it's Fufu here, and today I'm doing a video all about the very characterful Farfetch'd. This one has been relatively highly requested, so I'm eventually getting round to it. I'll be talking about the buffs that it has received in this generation, which are kind of significant, but first I will talk about the background of this Pokemon so you can appreciate the changes. If you do like this kind of video, please consider leaving a like because it really helps out the channel, and it also tells me what you guys are enjoying. So, Farfetch'd, introduced in Generation 1 and immediately had tons of competition because as a normal flying type, it was competing with Pidgey, Spearow, and Doduo, all of their families, and Farfetch'd is the only one that doesn't evolve and therefore does have the lowest stats. So it had competition from day one and it's had a raw deal over the time, I would say. Its stats aren't great. Its highest stat is a 65 attack stat, which is poor, and that's its best. So not very good for Farfetch'd from the beginning. Over time it has got a few things to help it out a little bit. It's now got a decently usable ability in Defiant, which means that it doesn't have to worry about Intimidate. Its attack will actually go up if it gets intimidated. And it's got some nice attacks in terms of Brave Bird, which is a very strong flying type attack, but coming off of weak attack stat that Farfetch'd has. And also Leaf Blade, which is really neat and is actually a really unique thing for Farfetch'd as a flying type Pokemon. Not many flying types get Leaf Blade, so that would be a reason to use it if it was any stronger or better in general. So what about these buffs this generation? Has it been helped out? Has it got that much needed huge buff? Well, it has got a big buff in its stats, or more specifically its stat. It has one stat buff, which is its attack stat, so you've got the highest base stat there to begin with, and it's going from 65 to 90, which is actually decent. Eventually Farfetch'd has one decent stat. I mean, the rest are still pretty trash, but at least it can hit decently hard, and that is something of note for Farfetch'd. Especially when you look that it does have the Brave Bird move, you actually might be able to KO some things with that, which is really cool. It's still slow, it's still frail, so it's probably going to faint very quickly, but if you can get a Brave Bird off before then, who knows what might happen. I would say the best set for Farfetch'd now with this buff is probably a Sword Stance set. It does have access to Sword Stance, which is really nice. Brave Bird is going to hurt a lot after a Sword Stance. You can have Leaf Blade to cover for any rock types that might want to switch in, and then maybe a priority move like Quick Attack can really help out there because there are a lot of faster Pokemon that might try and take you out, and you can try and get some damage off before you go down. So that's pretty cool. It's still not the strongest out there, but it will be able to do some damage. The only issue is finding an opportunity to set up a Sword Stance with such a slow and frail Pokemon. But it's maybe worth a try because you can do some damage now. The second buff that I'm going to talk about today is that Farfetch'd now gets access to First Impression, which is kind of weird. The only other family that get that is Golisopod. So why this wild duck Pokemon gets it, I'm not quite sure, but it's kind of neat. Now, it is the most powerful priority that Farfetch'd gets, and I was saying about Quick Attack previously, First Impression, though it's not stab, it doesn't have same type attack bonus, it's actually still Farfetch'd's most powerful priority move. My first impression of Farfetch'd getting First Impression wasn't so great because it didn't have that stab, but then I realised that it could be used on a very different set to the Sword Stance set that I've just talked about. I think it would be much better on a Choice Band set, because First Impression would then give it a way for Farfetch'd to pressure faster Pokemon, faster, frailer sweepers. It could come in and threaten to hit them with a Choice Banded First Impression. You still have the Brave Bird, and a Choice Banded Brave Bird would hit walls very hard, and then you can have coverage like Leaf Blade and Knockoff. So that is an option there for you now, a Choice Banded set as opposed to a Sword Stance set, because obviously Sword Stance isn't going to help First Impression, because First Impression has to be used on the first turn you send Farfetch'd out. You can't use it after that, so if you're Choice Banded you'll have to switch out, but I mean you might get a kill, so it's worth it. So yeah, just another set that may be a little bit more viable for Farfetch'd now. Not saying that it's going to work for you, but it's just one to consider. The last thing that I want to talk about today is the stick, Farfetch'd's unique item that no other Pokemon will benefit from. Now this buff is really from Generation 6, but I thought I'd mention it here because it has changed slightly in Generation 7 again. But what it does is it increases Farfetch'd's critical hit chance by 2 stages, taking it from the background 6.25% in Generation 6 all the way up to 50%. Farfetch'd will be critical hitting 50% of the time, and you're doing 50% extra damage when you do critical hit, which means on average you're doing 25% extra damage with every hit. That's comparable to a Life Orb, but you don't take any Life Orb recoil, which is quite important if you're going for recoil moves like Brave Bird. And it also means if your opponent is trying to increase their defense, you're going to ignore that because you're critical hitting through it. So that is really cool, and I would say that this stick is Farfetch'd's best offensive item that it could hold. You don't really want to hold a Focus Sash because you're Brave Birding anyway. Lumberry could work, but I would say that would be the only other consideration you might want to make. I would say stick is generally Farfetch'd's best item to go for those critical hits. Another neat thing to point out is that if you increase your critical hit chance by 1 more stage, you're always critical hitting, and you can do that by using high critical hit chance moves like Leaf Blade, like Night Slash, like Slash, all of which Farfetch'd get. And if you want to get really silly, you could try a special set with Air Cutter or even a Sky Attack set with a stick, but I think that's going a little bit too far because actually Leaf Blade, Night Slash and Slash, they're kind of usable, so if you want to go down that route you can. What's changed slightly in Generation 7 is just that the background critical hit rate has gone down from 6.25 to 4%. So the difference between the background and the critical hit chance that Farfetch'd is getting has increased slightly again. So this is a buff for Farfetch'd, and so I would say that the most viable set that Farfetch'd would have would probably be a stick set with a Sword Stance, Brave Bird, Leaf Blade, and then either Quick Attack or Knock Off. You could maybe do some damage to really try and get a KO. This Pokemon is still slow, it's still frail, you're going to struggle to get a Sword Stance up, you're probably going to struggle to get any attacks off, but if you do, you stand a small chance of getting a KO, and for some people I know that will be worth it because there are some Farfetch'd lovers out there. I mean, it's a cool Pokemon and it's quite silly, so if you really want to use a Farfetch'd, now is the time to do it. That's going to be all for today. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Best of luck with your Farfetch'd hunting. You will need that luck of the stick. All that's left to be said is I've been foofootoo, you've been awesome, and hopefully see you next time. Goodbye.